Your inner child is beginning to feel so safe with you. And this is coming after you have set some boundaries or you put some type of rules in place, I guess, around what it looks like to access you and your energy. And it feels like this could be with family members, friends. I'm not really sure exactly who it's with, but it does feel like you have really stood up for yourself. And my throat started to clog there. So it feels like this has been like a long time coming, is what I just heard. You really have always struggled to speak your truth, stand up for yourself, set boundaries without feeling guilt. And like, I think there's this other part where it was like this fear of abandonment or loss for standing up for yourself, like that it was not going to be received well. And you've been able to speak your truth, set your boundaries, set like these expectations around yourself, and you've been actually able to verbalize them to certain people. And it does feel like with this energy that the people that you were able to communicate this with were people who kind of kept you in this constant conflict. So it feels like they kept you in a constant doubt of yourself, like doubting yourself, like not being able to feel good about yourself. Um, they felt like it was really heavy. These relationships kind of, you were taking on a lot more of them than was actually yours. And I do think that like you really cared about these people that you had to put boundaries in place with, and it was a long time coming. And you kind of hit a wall, I guess, is kind of what's coming through. So you kind of like the final straw on the camel's back or whatever, the straw that broke the camel's back, I think is what it's called. That came through. And so, I think that for you, this was kind of like you got pushed to a certain point. I feel like you were having like a lot of doubts. You started feeling really depressed, possibly, very anxious around these people, and like it finally like turned its ugly head. And it feels like you may have done it in a way where it was a little bit ruthless in some ways, but like needed, right? Like, and I think that's like what's important to recognize is like sometimes when we get to the point where we're setting boundaries or we're setting standards for ourselves or we're protecting our energy and we've never done it before, we can come off and feel really harsh to other people or really intense. And it's kind of because kind of put up, put up, put up, put up, put up. And then all of a sudden you slam into that wall head first and you're like, I'm done. I'm done. Like, and it's kind of like an emotional, um, hit, I guess, in some ways. Like you finally get to the point where you are just done and you can't take anymore. And so the way that the boundary may come out or the way that you may set the standard may be a little bit oof, it feels. And it's the only way that you really knew how to. And it also was the only way that you could in that moment. So I'm hearing like be gentle with yourself around that. And you're learning. Learning how to set boundaries is not an easy thing. And it's definitely difficult for people who have never really done it before or in systems or families where it's never been present. And it's seen as a threat, right? People are going to see that as a threat if it's not normal within the systems and the dynamics that you usually hang out in or are around. And so even we sometimes can feel like we went too far or, there's guilt that comes back to us around it or we feel bad, right? And I think that's normal when you're first starting. Anything that you start is going to be uncomfortable until it becomes comfortable with practice and time, right? And especially when setting boundaries, once you're like hit that wall and you're pushed to a point, like you're going to pop off a little bit. And it's because you're just so full, right? And that's normal. It really is normal to kind of have that reaction when you're just full to the brim and you're ready to blow, right? I'm seeing like a volcano in my mind's eye, like this eruption that finally came where it was like, I have had enough and I can't do this anymore, right? And, you know, that's actually what's creating safety for your inner child. And I'm hearing for them to come out and play. And so it feels like there's like the silly side of you or this playful side of you that's coming out a little bit more, and you're starting to see more and more glimpses. And it's because you were able to protect yourself, and that made your inner child feel safe enough to come out and play. I'm seeing like, I don't know if someone when they were kids used to play in boxes or like things like that, but I'm seeing like a kid kind of pop out of the box, right? Silly little dances, silly little singing here and there, like little ways of just kind of like showing up and being seen, right? And this is you moving towards truly letting yourself be seen. And so this is kind of like the first step in that direction. It does feel like for a while you were in a very hyper independent kind of space where you didn't really talk to other people, or you kept yourself very separate rather than setting boundaries. And it was kind of like this overly protective kind of place that you were in some ways, because it was the only way that you really knew how to protect yourself was to kind of isolate yourself and just kind of like move away from things. So it feels like you didn't really communicate in those times. You kind of more so just like kept silent, or you like put distance. And I'm seeing that that's actually shifting. Like that's the energy that's shifting, because now you're learning how to use your voice. You're learning how to speak up. You're learning how to stand up for yourself in a way that feels good for you. And that's actually bringing people closer to you. And it's actually drawing in the people who are meant to be in your orbit, is what I just heard. So, the people that are meant to be around you and the people that are meant to share space and time and energy with you are the people that will understand when you set boundaries. So, when you set a boundary and someone reacts in a really negative light or in a really negative way, um, it feels like I'm being called to say, let them have their process, let them figure that out for themselves. There's nothing that you need to do with that. But you're calling in people who also have boundaries, who also respect their own energy, so therefore respect your energy. That came through. Okay. So when someone can't respect your boundaries or doesn't respect your boundaries, right? Um, it's because they don't respect their own energy. They struggle to set their own boundaries. They struggle to protect their own time. And so because they struggle to do that for themselves, you doing that kind of triggers something in them. And it kind of wakes them up to something that they haven't been able to do for themselves. And so that's kind of why that message earlier came through about like, if you do set boundaries with someone and they get very angry or they react in kind of like a negative light, like let them have their process and do that. That's part of their own healing, right? It's about recognizing where you end and someone else begins. That's kind of the important aspect when it comes to understanding boundaries and how to set healthy boundaries and how to maintain them without guilt and without feeling bad, and also without like pulling them back. But I do see that you are, feeling a lot more safe with yourself. And there's a part of you that also feels proud that you finally stood up for yourself. But there's like this little bit of energy of kind of like, I'm proud, but yet I also feel bad because of the way that it was responded to and reacted to. And it's about learning to let go of that piece and recognize that that's not yours to heal, nor is it yours to do anything about. It's actually the other person's to figure out and move through, right? I talk about this a lot, but we're here to learn lessons, and we're here for soul expansion and soul um and understanding ourselves on a deeper level, right? So there are going to be these things that are going to come up, and it's about recognizing what's yours and recognizing what's not yours, right? Recognizing what's yours to take on and recognizing what's not yours to take on, what's yours to acknowledge and notice and recognize and release. And I think that for people who are new to setting boundaries, and also it feels like I'm talking to somebody who's been very like people pleasy and perfectionistic in some ways, one or the other or both. um it is really difficult to recognize what's yours and what's not. And it's kind of a new skill that you're learning again. And you're learning how to notice that, how to recognize that, how to not overthink in that space, right? And that's a normal part of this growth pattern, is learning the difference and kind of weeble wobbling in and out of like healthy and unhealthy focus on this kind of thing. So the more that you are able to recognize what's yours and recognize what's theirs and release theirs with compassion and grace and refocus on yours, the more you're going to be able to not let the guilt and like the feel bad feelings come in and like overtake you, if that makes sense. It does feel like this energy is leading you to a much happier center within yourself. So, this is kind of like 10 of Cups energy, like feeling completely and utterly fulfilled and recognizing that you don't need other people to do that for you, but you can do that for yourself. And this is kind of the step that you're moving into. Part of you is also able to see yourself for the first time very clearly. Like you're able to acknowledge who you are, what you deserve, how precious your energy is, how beautiful your energy is and what it deserves, and also when it's being depleted and when it's not. So I'm hearing like the difference between being around people or in situations where it's energy takers rather than energy givers. And you're kind of in this place where you're starting to really be able to completely understand that and be able to tell the difference between those things. I also want to acknowledge, though, that this is something that changes over time as well. So as you grow and you change and you heal, what you can handle changes as well. So in the beginning stages, everything can kind of feel overwhelming and can feel like too much. But as you heal and grow and take time to yourself and focus on yourself and continue to fill your own cup, what you can handle externally actually becomes a lot more than what you could originally. So, this is an ever changing kind of cycle, I guess, is what's coming through that you should be aware of. It's not something that is just a one and done kind of thing, it's something that can change over time. And so I'm being called to share, like, there was a point when I ended a relationship and I was like, I am never talking to this person again, can never, ever, ever do it, like, not about it. And then, you know, a year later or a little more than a year later, I was like, you know what? Maybe I'd be open to having a conversation and seeing where how things landed, right? And then maybe in the future, I would be open to just letting things be what they are, right? But my point of sharing that is that your feelings and thoughts are meant to change, and it's okay if they change. You're allowed to change your mind. And with growth, with healing, and with focusing on your own energy and taking care of yourself and filling your own cup, there will be things that will change. And that doesn't mean that you're a fraud. That doesn't mean you're a fake. That doesn't mean that you failed or did something wrong. Like, that's normal. You're allowed to do that. And it doesn't mean that you like sabotage something or caused an issue. Like, at the time, you felt the way that you felt, and there's nothing wrong with that. And as you grow and change, that may grow and change with you. And that is also okay. So I think, you know, this is the thing about like the human condition, is we're constantly growing and changing. Or we should be, that's my opinion. We should be growing and changing and healing, right? And so that means that our perspective is going to grow and change and heal. What we can handle is going to grow and change and heal, right? And so that's just something to be very aware of. what worked for you last year may be completely different for you this year, and that's absolutely okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it can feel kind of frustrating because for people who are not on this healing or growth journey in the same way as the collective that I'm talking to today, there is judgment that's like, well, you said this thing. And it's like, yeah, I said that years ago, right? But you're talking to somebody who is just not into changing in the way that you are, or they're not growing in the way that you are, right? So they're going to remember and hold on to certain versions of you that you may not be anymore. And that's because of their own incapability to be able to see the growth that you've made, because witnessing your growth and acknowledging your growth would mean they would have to acknowledge that they haven't. Right? It's so funny because what's the theme today? It's so much about like the reflection, right? That literally the mirror that we experience in this reality in relationships. And it just feels like it keeps coming up, right? Where recognizing what's yours and what someone else's is so important because it really helps you to remove any feelings of things being personal, because majority of the time they're not personal. It's just that you're triggering or bringing something up for someone else that they have not yet worked through or healed. And a lot of the times that's what relationships come into our life to show us, right? We're here to heal and grow, show expansion. So it's a part of being on this planet, okay, peeps? And it's so important to just recognize the difference. Because when you can recognize the difference between what's yours and what's theirs, it helps you to not overly think about it. It helps you to not take it personally. It helps you to not like stay stuck in a yucky feeling associated with it. Like as soon as you can clock something and be like, oh, that's theirs, that's not mine, right? There's kind of like this freedom that comes with that, because then you can give yourself permission to drop the mic and let them have theirs, right? And you keep moving on your way through yours. As you heal and grow and change, you'll be able to see that more clearly in other people. But if you struggle to see that reflection in other people, or how that reflection is happening with other people or in relationships, that's because there's still things within you that need to heal and grow for you to be able to see those things more clearly, right? So we can't see what we have not done ourselves and healed ourselves. We can only see what we have healed. And so this is kind of why I think it's so important as a healer personally to do your own work and do your own healing, because you can only take people as far as you have gone yourself. And I truly, truly believe that, because you can teach other people how to move through their things if you have done it yourself, because you can see things from the perspective of a healed mindset, where someone who's still working through those things is still trying to understand that or see it from that perspective. I just think there's so much value in doing your own work and healing, especially if you're a healer. And we're never fully healed. So let me just say that we are never fully healed. Okay. We're all out here winging it and doing the best that we can, right? And healing never ends, in my personal opinion. I think you do it until the day that you leave this planet and transition into another life. But we are eternal, right? So forever we're learning and growing. I hope I am, anyways. But this is creating a lot of safety for your inner child. And you're going to start noticing like little kind of pop outs, little kind of like moments of, oh, that felt so good, right? And you're going to start having those little like sparks again. And I'm just really excited for you, because that is really beautiful. And it feels really good when you have those little sparks and they come out of nowhere and you have those little giggles, right? And this is leading you to being able to truly recognize who you truly are. This is leading you to being able to see yourself clearly. This is leading you to be able to have really comfortable relationships with other people and safe relationships with other people, because you're learning how to create safety for yourself and create a safe relationship with yourself, right? With your inner child. So that is going to start to be able to happen externally. And so through this work, you are growing this really beautiful community that is going to see you, and they're really going to be able to understand you in a way that I don't think you've ever felt understood before. And all because you started doing this work. And I just want to say that this work is not easy, and it is not always fun, and it doesn't always feel good. Okay. But what's on the other side of this is so worth it. And as you start to see little sparks with your inner child coming out in little ways, playing around and joking, I know that you too will feel the push to keep going, because those little sparks just feel so good. They're beautiful little moments in the day, and that's what life is about, is being in the present and enjoying little moments. And we create those for ourselves. And so the more that you protect yourself and take care of yourself and love on yourself, the more you'll see this little inner child come out, and the more you will keep walking towards your 10 of cups life that you want for yourself. So I'm gonna leave the message there. If you do feel called, take a look. I got some one-on-ones if you need some support or help or psychic readings. And I got some really cool prompt journals that you can take a look at too. Um, I love you so much. Take care.